I probably have to say two things about Eau Vive first.
Yeah.
Eau Vive was founded by Pere Tomas.
Yeah.
Probably 47, could have been 46.
Okay.
I went there in 1950. It was founded to be a school of wisdom, metaphysical and mystical.
Yeah.
The time I came there, there were probably 80 students.
80? So many. Okay.
Most of them doing philosophy, theology at the Dominican house, which was down the road.
Is that Le Sauchois?
Which has since closed.
Right.
The students were highly varied. There was a group of Arabs. There was Said, who was a Druze, who became a Catholic. There were Germans, and this was the first place that Germans could come into in France.
Yeah.
Pere Tomas was a great friend of a man called Monsieur Max. I don't know how to spell it, could be M-A-X, who was at the Ministère des Affaires étrangères. Your French is okay? Yeah. Pere Tomas had a vision of bringing philosophy and theology into a prayerful place, community. He had had a bit of difficulties with the Dominicans himself.
Yeah.
He had been a teacher in Rome, and at the time the Sauchois was headed up by a great Dominican called Chenu. Frightened of a lot of things, very frightened of communism, very frightened of any sociology being at the basis of doctrine. Yeah. So, in 1942, they were going to send a Dominican to put things right, which would meant debunking Pere Chenu. They kept Pere Tomas to replace Chenu, because normally what they do is they send somebody to debunk, and then they leave and go back, and they name somebody else from the group. So Pere Tomas was considered almost a traitor by his brothers, Dominicans. He became then the head of the Sauchois, the teaching faculty, to try to bring back the metaphysical, St. Thomas and the mystical. Yeah. That's to say that the metaphysical is for the fair life. And Pere Tomas realized that he couldn't change the Sauchois. The Dominicans were too set. I mean, he could have a few. So behind the foundation of the Sauchois was the desire to bring into a new vision, metaphysical and mystical. Yeah. He would never have said this publicly to counteract something which was more becoming psychological, sociological, and leaving a bit the metaphysical vision. So he was very linked then to people like Mapitain, to Charles Journet, who became a cardinal.
Okay.
His uncle was Pere Deahu, D-E-H-A-U. Pere Deahu was an extraordinary man who was blind. You could read about him in Les Grandes Amitiés of Maritain.
Yeah.
And Pere Deahu was linked up with Peggy, Léon Blois, Psychotic, all that movement during the 30s. I'd like to say something also. There was a great tension in the group of these intellectuals, and I don't know Rome, the Civil War in Spain, in respect to church, the whole vision, because as you know, Russia side on one side and the Germans on the other. I arrived there in 1950. In 1952, Pere Tomas was asked to leave and went to Rome. I don't think he had met Thompson before that period. When did the meeting take place? There are two names. There's Dr. Preyo. Have you heard of that name?
Robert Preyo.
And John Thompson. John Thompson, I think, was at UNESCO at that period.
That's right, yeah.
That knew Preyo, who had founded a big center near Compiègne for young people with delinquent and psychotic tendencies
Yes.
age 15 and
That's Le Hameau. Le Hameau?
No. Hameau École Île-de-France. H-E-I.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Right.
But I know that Thompson was at UNESCO and Preyo occasionally was at UNESCO for one reason or another.
Okay.
So I'm still unclear.
Okay. That's very interesting. I haven't picked that up.
Now, I come back before going to the story. I found I'll go on with the story and then come back to my appreciation of John Thompson. Pere Tomas was accused not on the theological level, but on the way he spiritually directed some people. John Thompson was furious, and Preyo furious the way they treated Pere Tomas. But there was a double movement in that. What had Pere Tomas done and so on. And then there was this act of revenge. I use that almost too strongly. Of the Dominicans to get rid of Pere Tomas. And it was there that John Thompson went to see the general of the Dominicans. Preyo went there. I couldn't give any of the dates.
Okay.
I don't know, you maybe shed some light on that. When did John Thompson meet Pere Tomas? Was it before his departure or after his departure? Pere Tomas left in April 1952.
Okay. I mean, I only know, very basic outlines. John Thompson converted to Roman Catholicism in 1944 in Toronto, and it was at this the institution with Etienne Houston, and the Canadian Roman Catholic Church, the Archbishop of Toronto, and the certain British Catholics, like the Bishop of Westminster and so on, Cardinal Griffin, were already supporting his initiatives as regard a sort of spiritual, and which was partly for a spirit, primarily in the field of education, youth education, and this international university scheme. They felt this was important. And when he would have, the period 46, 47, well 47 he begins to work for UNESCO, so that it could be any time. To me it's completely open because nothing is documented.
So let's come back to Thompson. He had a vision slightly different, but he and Pere Tomas clicked because Pere Tomas was brilliant. John Thompson was brilliant.
Yeah.
And he brought an immense amount to Pere Tomas. Pere Tomas knew only a psychology of Freud. And he had reviewed all the books of Freud, probably in 36.
Okay.
And here John Thompson revealed something completely different. John Thompson said he knew, and he certainly did knew Carl Jung well. He wanted to arrange a meeting between Carl Jung and Pere Tomas. I'm not sure it ever took place. Question on this. And Pere Tomas was deeply influenced, and I would say that John Thompson revealed a whole world which Pere Tomas ignored. And I would say that for myself, I received everything from Pere Tomas, and intelligence was open. And a lot that I have got from Pere Tomas came from John Thompson. John Thompson also I got a lot of things from him. But John Thompson was an incredibly mysterious person. He would come out with stories what was true, what was not true, and then you hear things that verified that it was true, and then but suddenly then you get something else from, like he talked about a meeting that he had with Truman and some other people about whether the bomb should be dropped. And there was Truman, and he said that he had said, when Truman had asked, is there any armament that is more dangerous? And John Thompson, in his enigmatic way, said, yes, if the enemy can push us so as we drop the bomb on ourselves. I mean, that was perfectly John Thompson. And of course, everybody, and you could see what he's saying, but in order to get to, and he would throw out these things for about 10,000 miles ahead of you, and you didn't see all the stops. Like in your paper, you mentioned the lake in Mexico. Did you mention that? Where all the adults became blind, and all the young people wanted to become blind because that was the sign of the adulthood. And then they discovered it was a mosquito that pricked people, and so. But he would give little things of this, and what is? And then of course he had been speaking about Nuremberg and Himmler, and then you go into Mexico, and then you hear about Truman. I mean, for myself, I didn't have all the intermediaries.
No.
To know what was true, what was not true. I mean, it was this. He could throw out something which would blow your mind, and which hampered the relationship. I never quite knew who he was. But at the same time, I remember, the great thing that he brought to Pere Tomas, and this really revolutionized Pere Tomas' thinking was the whole relation of mother-child. That a child needs love more than he needs food. Of course, he would push this to an extreme. I had difficulty with him because when Pere Tomas left, he really wanted me to be the director of Eau Vive, as though he really appreciated and was opened up and helped in 100 ways by John Thompson. He couldn't see him as being the head of Eau Vive, and his vision of Eau Vive, which in a way you described in your paper, but compared to what I knew of Eau Vive, it was miles away. Like, the only German I think that he brought was Sebastian Littman. And Sebastian, as you know, was in the youth, the Nazi youth. And then, well, you know the story of Sebastian, and then getting married to Mrs. Littman. Obviously knows much more than I do.
I see the mysterious things because I don't know how John and Sebastian first met, for example.
Well, they met somewhere in a camp, I think, in Germany. But like a lot of things, you'd get... But the whole vision of welcoming, psychotics. I mean, John Thompson brought in one or two people. But they had a very small compared, because when Pere Tomas left, the Dominicans wanted to take over Eau Vive. The board of directors resisted and asked me to be director. John Thompson, I think, was very hurt that I was asked and he wasn't asked. I was young, inexperienced, very inexperienced. But that didn't stop him coming, and there was a humility with him. But he was the one who helped little by little put things into place. Father Cayre, I pointed to
Father
Cayre, C-A-Y-R. He brought in him as the head of Eau Vive. That was complex, because Pere Cayre was a bit up in the studies. I was somebody who was quite quick, efficient, looking after the finance. Pere Cayre wanted me to be subservient to him, and that, first of all, but it didn't work out well, our relationship. But anyway.
Is it partly the problem of a lay community next to in its relations with I can say a hierarchical order, where there is a clear chain of command?
I would say yes, certainly. But there were so many other implications behind all that. John Thomas leaving, who, if Pere Tomas had been named there, it was by his provincial, therefore the provincial, how could Pere Tomas name, there was a board of his people, but how could I be there, so there was an element of le devoir, where people could say it was really up to the Dominicans, but then the devoir was also the board of the directors, and the deepest intention of Pere Tomas, which couldn't be voiced too much because he was trying. So there was a sort of non-dit, many things that were just not said and couldn't be said. So John Thompson, I think, ahead of it, he then, there was an old, I don't say barn, but he aménaged a house there and started living there and would go into UNESCO every day.
It was a barn, was it?
Well,
And
it used to be a barn.
Yeah,
I mean, he made it into something quite beautiful.
Okay. And the La Nativité, there's a letter which he writes Sebastian, and he says we must defend la nativité like the castre at BNB and Bou.
I think the nativité was his house that he had aménagé this.
Oh, I see. That's what he called it.
I think that was it, yes.
It wasn't, I wondered whether that was a sort of study, the spiritual centre of the community.
No, I don't think so.
That's what he called it.
But I can't, when he says we must defend la nativité, I think he's just saying we must defend, because that house that he had aménagé, this, he had put a lot of money, but the property wasn't his. So when he says we must defend it, because I think he saw that nativité, I think he saw himself as being the Pere Tomas, who was a sort of spiritual guide. But in a way he wasn't. He certainly was for 2 or 3 people that he brought who had had difficulty. One of them was
Matthias Lieber.
That's right. Then there was Sebastian. There was another chap who had a laptop in it. It had been something, when they cut the brain. I think it's a laptop.
Really?
And he was very, and I think it was possibly Preyo that
right.
So I think that Thompson saw Eau Vive as a place where people could come who were fragile. Matthias, this other chap whose name I forgot, but the 1 or 2. But there was a whole group of other people who were doing studies.
I understand.
So John Thompson was just a little bit out of it. But at the same time, he was the one who was doing everything he could to defend Pere Tomas, give him support, and to do everything he could to alleviate it. That's how Pere Tomas came and lived twice at Longoyonel with Dr. Preyo.
All right. Okay.
So, which was a Norbert and Rudy, they sort of turned against Pere Tomas, where they'd been, very deep disciples.
Yes.
They just, when you're too much a disciple, then you can become too much an enemy.
Yes.
So he spent long hours. But they were not people whom he could trust or I could trust. And so they left.
And I mean, was the issues spiritual, or was it in terms of the organisation of the community, or when this difference of opinion with
No, I think that Norbert and Rudy wanted completely to break. I was in always, and I've always been deeply linked to Pere Tomas, and so I would keep the spirit of Pere Tomas.
Right.
Where I could. And I would be in communication with Pere Tomas, whereas Rudy and Norbert wanted to separate completely, and then Norbert became teacher of philosophy at the Institut Catholique. So certainly Rudy and Norbert had many talks with.
Right.
I was unable to talk with them because I think they couldn't trust me because I was unconditionally with Pere Tomas.
Okay.
So, and then eventually it was closed down.
Right. I mean, when do you? I mean, the absolute closure was. Do you have a date or?
find the date, but there was a thing that came from Rome saying that I had to leave.
Okay.
And that I had 3 weeks. I mean, from the point of view of injustice, it was perfectly done. From the point of view of injustice, I mean, there was
it was hard. Right. And then there was a scheme to go to transplant Eau Vive Fatima.
Yes.
And
that was also John Thompson's idea.
Yeah.
He went to Fatima, I don't know in what year, probably in 51. He came back saying, really, there should be something there. It must have been maybe after the tragedy. And so I actually went there with a few people and actually bought some land and actually built a little house for me, for myself. But in the thing that came from Rome said that I had to leave Eau Vive, that I couldn't find any Eau Vives, and all that sort of
thing. Hence it.
And so then I was then cut off loose. And then began to see what my future would be. So.
Okay, thanks. I mean, it's extraordinarily interesting. Can I ask you about John Thompson's spirituality?
Because he didn't manifest it. I mean, he would come to Mass, or we'd go to Mass together. But he wouldn't. I think he was prophetic. He would see things much further ahead of anyone. But he wasn't really. Because one of the things I remember, he was always terribly pessimistic. I would come out from meetings with him. Everything was going bad. And what he shone at was when he talked about psychology, so there he really found that on the purely practical level, I think he was dépassé by many things and became very depressed by the state of the world, by the state of the church, by the state of the way they were treating Pere Tomas. So I would have difficulty with it.
Okay, so you have more, I can say, a more positive faith that the future would...
Maybe more abandoned, but maybe he was more intelligent. Many elements of him, which, and we must remember, were in 1954, 53. Pere Tomas, he saw as an incredible person. He was being sort of pushed down. So, I mean, he had every right to be depressed. Whereas I think I'm somebody probably certainly less intelligent and less vision. And I'm someone who will quickly accept reality and then try to work with reality. And I think all his experience with Germany. Do you know of a woman who was tortured here in Paris by a German doctor? I'll try to get to the book. It's a very moving book if we want to talk about experiments, neurological experiments. This story of her name has left me. She was young girl of 18, when the Germans came into France, she was so horrified that she quickly went into the resistance, and yet was very open, in the sense that there were two lives. Quite a beautiful young woman. And a great pianist. She was at the conservatoire here.
Okay.
And the Germans wanted a really good pianist, and they got her, and the generals were all excited because she was, I think, beautiful. And she was at the same time operating at another level and getting people released from Fresnes, I think was the prison, and saying they're my friends and they've done nothing, I can't understand how you put them in, and they were liberated 10 days later, and this sort of thing. And then they discovered who she was, and she was put into a place here in Paris where there was a doctor, I can find his name, because I have the book, and she was the only one who survived, that became totally debilitated in her body, totally. There were 20 of them, and they were getting special torturing treatments. And then in 1980, and she would discuss with the doctor, there was a young doctor, about 25, doing things on neurology, and she would discuss with him because she was the only one who spoke German. And then in 1982, she got a phone call and she recognized immediately the voice of this doctor. And the doctor said, I have to come and see you. He was then mayor of an Austrian village. And he came and to ask forgiveness. And he had cancer. He was dying. And he went back and he brought the whole of the village and his family together and told them what he'd done, and died a few days or weeks later. All this is in a book. Very moving, talking about the long conversation they had when he came to Paris in 82. And you would probably find somewhere in the archives what they had done. Had you ever heard of this story?
No, it would interest me greatly, actually. I mean, the way John Thompson spoke about Eau Vive when he was in New York, and this is, of course, completely afterwards, and of course you're right, he says incredible things, and he described it as follows, that he was shocked by caring for the victims of the Belsen concentration camp, and there were severe, some of the victims were severe mental disturbance, and that he took a group to France, and there was somewhere near Paris, and here it's a little bit blurred, as if some people say, oh, this was Eau Vive, and other people say, no, it was the estate of a countess.
It was?
At the estate of a countess somewhere, where care was provided for these victims. And this was the base, this was the origins of a therapeutic community. And then he saw Eau Vive as, in one way, as the total opposite of the concentration camp. That whereas the Nazis were bureaucratic and murderous, Eau Vive was spiritual, open, caring, therapeutic. So it was the complete opposite. And then the story of it ending is that one day one of the disturbed people whom he was caring for heard a voice which he imagined was Dr. Thompson, saying, now we must depart. And so that John Thompson comes back to Eau Vive and it's deserted. Well, it's a beautiful story in a way. It's like a parable. And he told this to young psychiatrists who were impressed by the way he cared with patients who were, no one else had the time to sit by them, and he would spend days and weeks just building up a rapport. And then there would be a reaction, and they were very, very impressed. And so that was this rather poetic vision of Eau Vive, the way, and of course
I think his dream, because I believe that what you've just described as his vision, I mean, this is Eau Vive, this is L'Arche.
Right.
All we say at L'Arche is that you have to take time to enter into rapport with someone, and they will start growing and getting better with trust.
Right.
So I mean, that vision is really what came through Pere Tomas, but also what I have learned. And of course there's a whole movement of psychology which credits that. But this vision of taking people from Belsen or wherever it was, I hadn't even, not only not thought of it, but...
It's a mystery, but I did, in your parents' papers, there was one document which I photocopied and brought to you, which is about the origins of Eau Vive. It's a very early document, and I thought you might be interested in it.
I have a feeling, just have to find out when this was written. Yeah, this was written well after Pere Tomas left. Whereas this one is something else, because l'Association des Amis, that was really Thompson who started getting, you see, we had to find ways to defend ourselves in front of Dominicans and to find so. Pere Tomas wrote this, and my parents loved Pere Tomas, so this was all part of, so this is certainly the vision that Pere Tomas wrote after he had left, so to give support to this little reality which was having difficulty, and giving a vision which people could accept.
I see. Okay. It has a very early foundation date.
Well, he puts here it was founded in 1945.
15th of July.
Yeah, and that's the date of the association. It's 45 years.
It's because a little bit. It's been. I think it's a clearly very early date. So that's
45. But this is all. This, as I say, this paper I'm sure was written after, probably. But this takes in things that he had written. I might even be able to find some that he had written and which were being used before I came or after I came. You see, this sort of thing you would never have written in 40 lines.
Could it come from the time when Pere Tomas approached your mother for assistance with the community? You think it's later?
No, it's much later. You see, Pere Tomas, I would see Pere Tomas occasionally. I would talk to my parents, and he wanted to help my parents to... See, for my parents, my mother got interested because Pere Tomas became her spiritual director and helped essentially for les foyers de charité to raise money. But I'm sure this came after. Because he wrote many documents after that he sent to me, to be the the voice of it. But I'm sure this can. Whereas this is something else. You've got 10 ambassadrices onto his.
I mean, for me from the outside, it's impressive from the point of view of the, I find it interesting from the point of view of the intellectual, the intellectual sophistication. I think that John Thompson learned a great deal from the philosophy of Maritain, and he saw a way of putting medicine on the basis of a divine love, and you have the communion of the doctor and the sick person. And it was a complete break he'd earlier on been a neurophysiologist and so on, and it was a total break. It was a way of reconceptualizing the basis of healing, therapy.
There you have to look into how much time did he spend with Jung? What was the knowledge he had of Jung?
Yeah.
I mean, he gave the impression that he was an intimate friend of Jung, that he had worked with him.
Okay.
I have no basis.
You have, I think, someone visited called Yolande Jacobi, who was a close associate in around 54. Who was very close to Jung, Yolande Jacobi. She has she'd Hungarian background, and she'd converted from Hungarian Jewish background, but had converted to Roman Catholicism in the 20s or 30s already, and was very, very interested in those people within the Roman Catholic Church who took a serious interest in psychoanalysis, psychotherapy. There's a Father Victor White in Oxford who's interesting from that point of view, but she mentions a whole range of thinkers, and clearly that from that point of view, Eau Vive is part of a broader movement, and from that sort of psychologically that there was an interest in building bridges between the church and psychoanalysis.
You know, it doesn't strike too much of a bell, even that person, Yolanda, just doesn't strike a bell, there's just an empty spot there.
No,
You see, we were so